What is up, everybody? It's me, Rhoku, back with some more League content, and in this video, we're going to take a look at how to master Darius mechanically. Now, Darius seems like a very easy to play champion. He certainly has a lot of simplicity in his kit, but there are a bunch of champion-specific mechanics that you have to at least have an idea about in order to crush the teams and lanes that you're even good into. So, if you counterpick someone with Darius, you'll probably lose if you don't know some of these things. That is where this video comes in. We're going to cover every single bit of information, all the techniques, and some potential combos that you have to know in order to play Darius to perfection. Now, to get everyone up to speed together, from the guy who only has 5 games with Darius to the advanced veteran who's looking to fill in some gaps in his knowledge base, I'm going to cover everything from the most simple fundamentals to the most difficult combos and mechanics. By the way, before we get into things, I'm assuming that you already know everything there is to know about Darius' abilities, so if you don't, check out the link I've left in the description to the LoL fandom wikia. This website houses the most detailed descriptions of every single ability of every single champion in the game, so make sure you open up Darius' page and read every single thing about his abilities until you understand it all, and then come back into this video. Quick disclaimer, I'm going to be using the word module interchangeably with the word technique. Doesn't make much sense right now, but it will later on in the video. First things first, auto attacks. Now, auto attacks are vital to master on Darius, specifically how to cancel auto attack animations. I'm going to use a image from the fighting game Street Fighter of Ryu, and there are 3 types of frames that I want you to keep in mind even with League of Legends auto attacks. There are the first few frames, which is the startup, and then the active frames, and then the recovery. Now, for the purposes of League of Legends, auto attacks have 1 active frame, but the rest of the startup and the recovery frames are still there. So let's just take a look at Darius. We've got the startup frames when he winds up his axe. We have the active frame when he lands the attack on the enemy, and then the recovery frames when he's basically returning the axe to its default position. So look. See, like, he swings the axe connects, and then returns to his normal position. Now, the part where he swings the axe is necessary for the auto attack. The part where the auto attack lands is also necessary to make sure it transfers over to the enemy. But the part where Darius returns the axe to the normal position is unnecessary. So you can input any other command during these frames in order to cancel them. Let's try it right now. So we're gonna basically wait for the Darius to swing his axe on the target, and then right click when the axe is done transferring the auto attack over. There you go. Now this is quite important because you really want to be inputting movement commands and abilities during these useless frames. These frames do nothing but make sure your character stands still for an unnecessary amount of time, which lets the enemy get into a better position, basically outchase you. Like if you're running after someone and you wait for the entire recovery auto attack frames, they're just gonna run away from you and you won't be able to keep up with them. You can also add in abilities during these recovery frames. So let's say, for example, Q. So normally without the auto attack animation cancel, you do auto attack and then Q. But with the cancel, it's like this. Much faster. You need to know how to do this, and you need to master it. So while you're practicing how to CS in the practice tool, make sure you cancel your auto attacks as much as possible to really master the timing on this. Also be wary of the amount of attack speed you have, because it can get tricky with different levels of attack speed, and also different skins with different auto attack animations. One thing that you gotta keep in mind is that you have to layer in auto attacks as much as you can in between different techniques / modules. Let's real quick talk about Darius' abilities in that the mechanics and facts that are shared by all of Darius' abilities, because they do act similar in some ways. First off, all of Darius' abilities are unstoppable, meaning that if you start the ability and then someone sees you, stuns you or whatever, you will still finish the ability out. So if you're up against a Renekton, he W's you, which is his point and click stun, but you start your W auto attack, it will finish out no matter what. Now there really isn't a elegant way of displaying this in practice tool because there's no other champion and you can't really control what they do, but there is Dragon. Now when Dragon flies up into the air after you attack it, it displaces all the units that are around it, and displacements in the game kind of work like stuns. So we're gonna auto attack it once, and then W while it pushes us away. As you can see, the Drake has 2 stacks on it from the auto W, and our W kind of worked while we were flying. So you get the idea, right? Remember the frame data we used to explain how auto attacks work? Well, the same exact thing applies to abilities. Yes, every single ability in League of Legends consists of startup frames, active frames, and then recovery frames that are absolutely useless. You can cancel these recovery frames with movement commands and auto attacks. Now to display the difference between canceling the ability animation and not canceling it, I've devised a method. And this method is using Ironspike Whip, hook, and then auto-attacking the target. Now as we all know, Darius will automatically start auto-attacking the target that you hook. I didn't need to click there, and I don't have the auto-attack enabled in my game settings. So this is perfect, because the way the game does it automatically is that the game doesn't cancel the recovery frames of Darius's hook. So I'm going to do it where we don't basically cancel those recovery frames, and then compare it with when I do cancel those recovery frames. And the number I want you to take a look at is the DPS number, because this is where the changes are going to be noticeable, because if the attacks are closer together, then it makes sense that the DPS is just higher, right? So let's take a look. Ironspike Whip, E, auto attack. 238. Remember, I have no Conqueror, so there's no difference in AD. 238. 237. So 240 is roughly the amount of DPS that we get without canceling the E, the hook useless recovery animations. Now let's see what happens when we do cancel these frames. So Ironspike, hook, auto attack. 292. Again. 291. 256. I messed that one up, but it's still higher than the previous amount. Now, this is something that is to be mastered, and it is quite tough to get that exact timing off with one input, right? So if I do it with one input, sometimes it works. All right, I'm just too clean on this, but basically speaking, getting that perfect auto attack is sometimes not too possible. Because let's imagine it like this. This is the animation, and we want to attack when the animation is going to land, okay? Now, the issue with fighting games is that if you press the attack once, and you do it too early, the attack's not going to go off. But if you do it too late, then you're leaving in some frames of inefficiency. So a fighting game technique is to press the attack button twice. So 1, 2. This basically makes it so that the chance of you missing the ability, meaning that you don't attack at all, is basically 0, and you're more likely to get a frame-perfect command given to your character. So the way this translates over to League of Legends is you do Ironspike Whip, hook, and then you right-click twice. Right? It's way more easier to get the hang of this ability animation cancel with multiple commands of auto attack instead of just one. This is quite an advanced technique, so don't worry if you don't get the hang of it right now. You can always learn it later down the line. Alright, now that we're done with all that, let's get into our first official module / technique, which is auto attack W, like so. Now the thing you gotta understand about this is that W is an auto attack reset ability. The way this works, and I'm going to try to explain this in the simplest way possible so that everybody understands it, is that your auto attacks have cooldowns, much like your abilities. Now, the cooldowns you have right here, that's 6 seconds, is how many seconds it takes per ability. With auto attacks, it's reversed. It's how many attacks fit into a single second. So if you get the math, it's basically switching the fraction around. Now, with the auto attacks having a cooldown, what an auto attack reset ability does is that you don't have to wait for that cooldown. You can just get the next attack out instantly as soon as you press the ability, like this. So 2 auto attacks normally are like this, 1, 2, but with our W acting as an auto attack reset, it's 1, 2, right? Way faster. Now you want to basically use this as the beginning to every single situation possible, except for this one type of situation. Now, if the enemy is going to stay in your range for your auto attack W, meaning that they're immobile, then cool, go for the auto W, right? You can use it basically every single time. But if you're up against an enemy that's really mobile, and by the time you get that auto attack W out, they'll already be outside your range, then it's better to just straight up go for the W, because if you're chasing this Fiora or Trinamir or whatever, it's better to just get that W on them if the situation calls for it, in that they're trying to get away from you, right? If you're trying to get away, just screw the auto attack, just get that W on them so you can actually follow up and kill them after they dash, because they slows on them, right? This next module applies to Ironspike Whip and the items that build out of it, meaning that it applies for it, stridebreaker, and goredrinker. Now, when Darius Qs, you can actually use Ironspike Whip while you do the Q. So Q Ironspike Whip, and you basically perform both of them at the same exact time. This is a great way of getting a bunch of damage out and using the Ironspike whip to get an extra stack of Conquer out really quickly. Now, what's even better about this is that while Ironspike Whip and Goredrinker make you stop while you do Ironspike Whip, Stridebreaker does not. So if you have Stridebreaker, you can basically just move around and do all your usual Darius things, but basically add an extra attack in the middle of your Q. There are very little situations that you don't want to do this in when you have the active, but it really depends on the item. Because if you have Stridebreaker, you might want to save the active to a situation where you might need the slow, or if you have Goredrinker, you might want to save the Goredrinker active for when you need the heal, aka your low HP, and being bursted down. But still, if you want to get as much damage out as possible while you have the Ironspike Whip items, you can just do this Q Ironspike Whip combo that we just talked about. The next module or technique we're going to get into is our W+Q Animation Cancel. It looks like this. You got the idea. Now, the way this works is that, basically speaking, in the middle of our W animation, at any point, you can basically press Q and have both abilities apply at the same time, right? So W, we press our W, right click, and then Q. And we do both of them at the same time. Now, for those of you who care, the reason why this works is that Darius' abilities, as mentioned before, are CC proof, in that you can't stop Darius from casting his abilities if you stun him, right? If he starts it, they will play through. When Darius Qs, he doesn't actually channel an ability, but he CCs himself by applying an effect called Disarm. This doesn't really exist in the game anymore, but it does on Darius' kit, where if you press Q, you can't auto-attack, you can't cast abilities, that's the Disarm effect. Now, because this is CC, if you start your W and then press Q, that CC isn't going to stop at Darius, because again, Darius' abilities can't be stopped by CC. So that's basically the general premise of why it works, right? So when we do W and Q, that self-CC from Q does not apply to the W, and you can just basically play it out. So again, we're going to display the difference in speed. If you do W+Q normally without this cancel, it looks like this. Like that. But if you do with the cancel, way faster. Now, you basically want to do this module as often as you possibly can, because it's literally just getting 2 stacks in one and getting a ton of burst damage out really, really quickly. But the one circumstance that you don't want to do it in is basically when you actually need your W slow to land your Q. Let's say somebody is right on top of your champion, right? If you do W+Q and they're constantly moving inside of your Q, then it might be a bit difficult to land it. What's better, if you're in this situation, is to do the W first, and then walk out and do the Q. Aside from this one case, you almost want to do the W+Q cancel in every single other case possible. Understanding how Darius' abilities work with Flash is very, very important, because Flash turns Darius from a somewhat dangerous champion to an insanely dangerous champion in the right circumstances. One of the most popular ways to use Flash is to use it with your Q. Now, you might think that you have to basically Flash first and then Q, but the proper way to do it is to Q first and then Flash. You basically want to Flash as soon as Darius is about to strike with his Q. Now, the reason for this is that let's say that this guy has a dash or some sort of ability that can nullify what we're trying to do here, which is attack him with our Q. If you Flash, right, and then Q, it basically gives him more time to react to your Q. You don't want to do that. You want to Q and then Flash at the very end of it. Now, this is basically great to do in almost all elos except hyper high elo, Master, Grandmaster, Challenger. If you're trying to play Darius up here, then top players at that rank know that Darius can do Flash Q. So you want to be a bit more tricky with your Flash Q, and this tip is only for these high elo players. Basically speaking, right, when you're going for Flash Qs, the enemy knows that you're going to do it. So there are multiple options available to you. Number one, bait the flash from the enemy. When the enemy knows that you're going to Flash Q in, right, let's say they're Noxian, they're 100 HP, they're about to die, and the Q will kill them, you wind up your Q, and they know you're going to Flash Q in, right? So they're going to flash like into you right here to stop you from getting that kill. But to basically trick the enemy and cheese them, you just press Q, and then they flash away. So you get a free flash by just pressing Q. You don't get the kill, but if you don't have any other way to secure that kill, it's a good way of getting a free summoner spell at least. And sometimes you get lucky because they'll want to flash in on your inner area and kill you, but then they'll just flash to your outer Q area. So that's a free kill. Now, another thing you can do to flash Q is that, let's say you're in a fight, right? And you land that Q is really, really crucial. This is a trick that I basically came up with because, I don't know, I've never seen anyone do this. But basically speaking, right, a high elo player will always want to be inside your inner Q area, okay? So if the fight is really dependent on you landing that Q, you land it, you win, you don't land it, you lose, and you press Q like this, then your enemy is most certainly going to flash in on you, okay? And you can try to predict this by, you know, doing this and then flashing to the side or something so that when they flash into you, they still get hit by your Q. But a very nice, tricky way to do this, in a way that basically surprises your enemy and cheeses them, is by walking towards your enemy, pressing Q, and then missing your Q on purpose, right? By walking into them and making sure they're inside the inner Q area on purpose, and then you flash out. So this is the enemy, I do like this, and then I flash to the side. This is like basically the most guaranteed way of landing flash Q against a high elo opponent who's going to basically predict your flash Q. Because the amount of possible areas you can flash Q to is absolutely endless. Down here, you can Q flash back, or not with a max range, but you know, you can flash back, you can flash ahead of the enemy. Like there are a countless number of areas that you can flash into to land that Q. So this is like the most guaranteed way of doing it. And if your opposing top laner is aware of this, and they also react and flash, then it's a very, 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 very low likelihood that they'll actually flash into your inner Q, right? Like, the worst that can happen in most practical situations is you flash in a random direction, and they flash in a random direction, which basically puts space between you two to maybe work with or whatever, right? But still, that is basically a trick I've come up with to land your Q against high elo top laners who basically know you're going to flash Q. But again, these tips are only for high elo Darius 1 tricks and not for, you know, the rest of you guys. So yeah, let's just get right into the other tip, or the other module rather. The issue that you run into a lot of the times against champions that are mobile especially is that they can dash into your Q. So if this is a Fiora and I do auto WQ, she can just Q inside of my inner area and make sure that I don't land that ability. We don't want this. We have to find a way to guarantee our Q against champions with dashes or flashes. The way we do it is by using our hook. Here's a display of it. So here's our target, EQ, bam. Now, as you can see, while we hook the enemy, they get this airborne effect on top of them. And to get this, you go into your interface, right? And then you enable this show loss of control UI. It's a lot easier because you get to see the effects and how long they last with a bar. Anyway, so when a champion is airborne, they're currently under a displacement spell, and they are basically stunned. They can't cast abilities, they can't move, they can't auto-attack, they can't use items, okay? They can't do anything. And we use Q while they are airborne in order to make sure that we guaranteed hit them with the Q while they are stunned, if that makes sense. There's a very particular way to do this, which is basically, on your keyboard, you want to press E and Q one after another, like so. Like, I don't know if the keyboard's loud enough, but the way I do it is like, tuck tuck, you know, one after another. Now, the reason we do this and not actively click, right click or whatever, is that if you do so, and if you input other commands, there's a chance that human error gets in the way and you don't pull it off properly, right? You don't want to leave it up to your own personal human timing when the way Darius does it automatically is fast enough to guarantee the Q, right? So EQ, wait, and once the Q starts being wound up, then you move to aim it, okay? I know we're not canceling our ability animations, but this is fast enough and it's easy to do consistently. This is mostly useful in all-ins where landing that Q means the difference between winning and losing, so make sure that landing that Q is just very important, because otherwise if you're doing this for like a normal fight where you don't need it, then you're wasting 2 abilities just to land 1 Q. Let's talk real quick about buffering our abilities using our flash. Now imagine this. This target dummy is an Ezreal with 100 health. Our ultimate alone will kill him, but he has his E and he has his flash. So if you do flash and then ult, there are a few microseconds, or milliseconds rather, that the Ezreal can react in and then dash away. You don't want to give him this opportunity. So what you do is you press the ultimate first and then you flash in. This way, Darius will start the ultimate as soon as he himself gets into range. You can also do this with auto attacks and W. So we do our W, flash W, and then flash auto attack. But it's mostly useful for ultimate because that's the ability that is really important to finish the enemy off with. The next module we're going to get into is flashing in the middle of our ultimate like so. Now, the circumstances under which this is useful is basically when we're fighting an enemy, our ultimate will kill them, but they're performing an attack on us that will put us down before we get our ultimate off. So in this circumstance, let's say Aatrox is winding up his Q, we press R, and then we flash out. He misses Q, we get our ultimate off, and he dies to the ultimate, or just dies to bleed. This is also useful when you're diving your enemy, because when you're diving, the last thing you want to do is stay under the turret longer than you need to. So you do your combos, they're running away, you chase them, and then you ult, and then you flash out so you don't have to take extra turret shots. The next module or technique is flashing in the middle of W, just like when we flash in the middle of our ultimate. So we W, right click, and then we flash out. The circumstances under which this is useful is basically ones where you want to do the ultimate flash out, but you don't have your ultimate, either it's on cooldown or it's pre-6, or situations where you need both the damage and the slow. So let's say that this target is a Tryndamere or a Fiora, they're chasing us, or a Jax, and they're DPSing us, right? If we stay in their rage for another second, they will kill us. But if we get one more attack off, and we just flash away, then they're going to bleed to death. What you do is you W, and then you flash out. And because the W slows them, in addition to damaging them, even if they flash after you, they won't be able to reach you, so you can just walk away. This is very useful in such circumstances, so make sure you keep it in mind, especially against high DPS champions. You don't want to get into your face and just, spam you to death with auto attacks. The next module or technique that we're going to get into is E, auto attack, and then ultimate. Now, these circumstances under which you would want to do this is if the enemy has an ability that will basically stop you from killing them with your ultimate. Let's say it's a set W shield, a Mordekaiser W, it can be an invulnerability like a Kayle ultimate, a Vlad W, or even like a Zhonya's Hourglass in some cases. The basic idea is, let's say that the target is 400 health and 4 stacks. Now if we get one more stack on them, then our ultimate will do enough to kill them. But we have to do it before they cast that one ability that counters our ultimate and basically blocks its damage. So what we do is we hook, and during that airborne effect that's on the enemy, we get an auto attack off and an ultimate, just like so. Now you gotta make sure that you have a decent amount of attack speed when you're trying to do this combo. If you do it with a very low amount of attack speed, and you sort of introduce some human error, basically you get that auto attack off a bit too late, or maybe you don't cancel the useless animations so you're auto attack enough with your ultimate, then you might get into a situation where the enemy has time to actually use that ability to mess you up. So you gotta, it basically helps to have a faster attack speed than usual, with a Triforce or something, or even like a fully stacked alacrity in some cases. With us being done with the techniques and modules, we can finally get to the combo portion of this video. Now, if you literally want to see long combos and learn how to execute them, then click the link in the description or in the top right of the screen of the card, because there will not be any long combos in this video. Now, I know it's a bit clickbaity, and especially annoying if you watch this video and skip to this part, you basically click on it just to see the combos, but hear me out for a minute. Basically speaking, all the people who would get mad at me for leaving out these super long combos are also the people who share this fundamental flaw with how they think about the game, especially when it pertains to fighting other champions in the middle of the match. That is why I wanted to gather all of you who share this flaw in your thinking and dedicate this portion of the video to giving you a lesson that will change the way you think about fights in-game for the better. When it comes to League of Legends, especially in the context of improving at the game, the word combo is really problematic because it means different things to different people. It is not really a strictly defined term. What I'm going to do is use an example to display what my main point is for this entire section of the video. Let's imagine an all-in scenario between Darius and Riven. Let's add a few more factors to give context to the combo that Darius uses to kill the Riven, right? So the Riven in this example has no Q has no W, has no E. All of her basic abilities are on cooldown. Now, given this fight, she used her E first, so it's going to come up in 2 to 3 seconds, right? It's going to come back up. Darius uses this specific combo to kill her. Auto attack, W, Q, auto attack, E, auto attack, R, okay? Now here is where the difference in mindset comes. When it comes to a green player, who basically just, is inexperienced with how fights work in game, and an experienced player who's the type of person, the streamer, the high-level player, to actually use this combo in the right moment to get the kills. To a green player, this entire thing is one combo in its entirety. However, the more experienced player sees this combo as not just one entire thing, but different modules strung along together in the right order. Module 1, Auto W. Module 2, WQ. Module 3, E, R attack ult. And then an auto attack in the middle of these modules because, as we mentioned in the auto attack portion of the technique section, you want to leave auto attacks in between modules to get as much damage and stacks off as possible. Now, why did we use these 3 modules specifically? Auto W, because the Riven has no more mobility, so we can get both auto attack and W up without much resistance. WQ, because again, the Riven has no mobility, so she cannot dash into RQ, which means that we don't need to guarantee it with our hook. So auto attack, WQ. Now, by this point, Riven is getting close to when her E is coming off cooldown. So we want to basically get that 5-stack ult off on her and kill her before she can actually use that ability. So what we do is auto attack and use her E auto attack ult module to get that final Noxymite ultimate off and finish her off with the ultimate itself. Now, I do realize to some players, thinking of things in a modular way might seem a bit arbitrary as opposed to a full combo way because, hey, we're just hyper-analyzing the situation instead of just, simply learning the combos. But the advantage of thinking about things in a modular way will be very, very clear once I change the situation. Let's say that in this other scenario, the Riven has all of her abilities up instead of having none of her basic abilities up. So I guess the full ability having Riven, if you try to do this combo, you'll just get yourself killed. Because as you do the auto W, the Riven will walk up to you, she'll press W, canceling your auto attack, and then she does her Q combo, which is auto attack Q, you get the drill. Now this is Riven's main damage combo. So by the time you're finished with your auto W, the Riven has basically taken down most of your health bar with her Q combo, and you won't even land this Q because guess what? She has her E up. So she's going to dash into your Q and make you miss it. So you're practically mostly dead to an ignite or whatever before you even get to this second portion of this long combo. Now what do we need to do? We need an entirely new combo to fit this new situation against the Riven with all our abilities up. Now you might be thinking that, hey, why don't I just think about that long combo, memorize that and this long combo? This is where the modular thinking is better. Because instead of having to memorize 2 different combos, you could just memorize all these modules individually and use them to craft your own combos in the middle of the fight, depending on what you require for that specific engagement. This is very important because just watch a stream of a high-level one-trick playing a champion that you like watching. And write down every single combo that they do during a fight. And you'll come up with like 20, 30 different things. The guy who's playing that champion isn't consciously thinking about those 30 different long combos because learning all of them, learning when to do them, when not to do them is an entirely insane task. It's completely unfeasible. What's more feasible? Learning the 5 to 10 different modules and making up your combos as you go along. This is way more advantageous. In conclusion, the player with the modular mindset will almost always trump the player with the rigid mindset who just learns full combos and types words out on his keyboard essentially. Now if there's one thing that I want you to do, it is to get into practice tool and train these combos as I do them. So leave me on your second monitor, on your phone, whatever, and do the combos with me and train them over and over again until you get it right. If you watch this video and you don't actually train, it's in one ear and out the other. We don't want that. We want you to get better at the game. So get into practice tool and train until you don't mess them up against the target dummy. After that, use them in-game so you know how to use them against players that fight back. Alright, that's pretty much it for this video. This was a really fun one to make, and I hope you guys enjoy this one too. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.